Hello and welcome to another Comics Burst from the Full Force podcast, sponsored by Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, where we take an in-depth look at the newest G.I. Joe comics and related titles of the week, with me as your host, Chris Bioflesh Regenerator McLeod, aka Diagnostic 80. Joining me for yet another Full Force appearance is Anthony Brucali from TFU.info and the Transformers University podcast. On this instalment of your absolutely favourite kind of burst, we look at the third issue in this new mini-series connected to the Transformers universe, Transformers vs. the Terminator. So without further ado, come with me if you want to live. The T-800's mission is simple: exterminate the Cybertronians and ensure the future belongs to Skynet. When Optimus Prime offers his aid, suggesting they go after Megatron together, the T-800 faces his toughest decision yet. Is the enemy of his enemy his friend, or just another threat to the mission? So, here we go again, bud, with issue 3 of this little mini-series. Now, before we get into the actual story, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, thanks. Yeah, everything's going pretty well here, and yeah, things are good.
Are you excited for PulseCon? There's a lot of Transformers leaks going on at the moment for the reveals.
There was a leak like 5 minutes before we started recording this, and there will probably be another 5 minutes after we're done.
I mean, we've seen Scourge looks pretty cool, doesn't he? We've seen the Hot Rod Studio series. Was that a leak or is that official now?
Oh no, that's a leak.
Okay. I mean, it just seems like, I think Transformers gets hit the worst. G.I. Joe gets it too, usually the day before, but Transformers gets leaks definitely more than any other brand, doesn't it?
Yeah, and we've gotten it pretty bad the last month or so, where I mean pretty much all of next year has been either leaked in some sort of form in text or in photos. So.
It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, there's like the Ark and there's the Kingdom series, and like there's all of the things like, what is it called? It's kind of like the fossilized kind of stuff as well. I mean,
fossilizers is what they're called.
That's pretty cool, actually. I really like that idea. I mean, it's crazy at the moment. As a Transformers fan, we're getting a lot of stuff, aren't we?
Oh yeah, well, there's certainly something for everyone, which I think is great too. There's there was another leak a few days ago, which will probably be something with PulseCon of the 10th anniversary of Transformers Prime. You have Beast Wars within Kingdom, yeah, and then you have the G1 movie moving into studio series, which still has room to grow.
That's dangerous for me because I love the movie, and I've always, I know Masterpiece has done well to give us like some really good animated versions of the characters, but the Studio Series 86 movie, man, that's danger for me. Like, I think I might have to start getting involved in that.
Yeah, and the scary thing is like they're really looks like they're coming close to kind of finding a way to replace Masterpiece.
Yes.
for some fans at a lower price point, which is just insane.
Yeah, big time. And I'm a big Masterpiece guy as well, which is I'm mixed on that. But anyway, let's get into what we want to get into here, and that's Transformers vs. the Terminator issue 3. The Enemy of My Enemy part 3, story by David Marriott, Tom Waltz and John Barber, writer David Marriott and John Barber, artist Alex Milne, colorist David Garcia Cruz, and letters and design Jake M. Wood. Now, last time out, we got to the end of the issue and we saw a preview for the next issue, and that's what this cover A is, and we kind of discussed it a little bit at the end of that episode, but Bumblebee riding on top of Optimus Prime with the Terminator in his flesh suit, as it were, on a motorbike with Sarah Connor. So obviously none of this has actually happened or could happen based on what happened in those issues, and we kind of talked about it then. But what do you think about this? It's kind of a departure from Gavin, isn't it, Gavin Fullerton, on this one, because he was doing like a series of like the red on dark kind of very minimalist covers, wasn't he? So what do you think about this kind of direction?
I like it. I don't know if it's meant to be kind of a callback to Terminator 2 in some way.
Yeah.
The motorcycle and I still, for whatever reason, Bumblebee on top of Optimus Prime irks me.
It's hilarious, I think. Yeah.
I mean, it's hilarious, but it's like, come on, just transform. Just go.
Be lazy.
You're faster.
You're actually faster than Prime. So that's hilarious. I agree with that one, and it's a nice cover, but I'm one of those guys that I think I understand with variant covers and exclusive covers and all that kind of stuff, you can kind of go in all sorts of directions. You don't have to say what, like a direct translation as to what's going on in the issue, but I feel like some of the covers have to cover what's going on in the issue. I feel like at least cover A needs to kind of be giving the consumer an idea of what's happening in this issue. I don't think cover B, C, retailer incentive, exclusive. I don't think they have to, But I think in terms of this one, I would like to see something that's going on inside the actual issue. Again, it's a minor irk of mine, and I don't know why it bothers me so much. But going on to cover B, actually, that's a pretty neat one by Andrew Griffith. A very kind of beautifully drawn T800 exoskeleton. And funny enough, when I actually watched, when I saw this the first time out, I didn't notice Prime and Megatron with the kind of like the heads like facing each other on his chest. I mean, what are your thoughts on this issue?
I'm a big fan of Andrew Griffith's work, and so this one here is really nice. I mean, I think the line work, the colors are all great. The pectoral heads of Optimus and Megatron.
Peck heads.
Yeah, they're like peck heads.
That'll be a new Transformers line revealed at PulseCon. Transformers peck heads.
Yeah, they look good. I like it. It's a way to do it. I don't know if it's a little weird, but it's weird in like the right way.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I also like the fact he's subdued a lot of the colors on Prime to and also kind of given that side of the Terminator a bit more kind of like almost it's getting a bit of darkness on that side of his chest. So at least he's kind of almost made it so that Prime doesn't kind of leap out at you there. Obviously, Megatron kind of blends in comfortably because of the color. But I really like that, and I think when you it looks simple, but when you actually look at it, the depth and the detail in that exoskeleton is amazing. So yeah, really good work on that by Andrew Griffith. Now we get a retailer incentive, only the three covers this time. We don't get like 36 variants and so on. It's not Dead Game. And this one is Freddie E. Williams II again on art and Jeremy Colwell on colours. And again, like this little combo, this artistic combination, have been doing amazing covers like this for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from IDW, for G.I. Joe and Paul Aller's book, especially IDW. And I love this style. Like, I really dig it. And this is really cool because, again, it deviates massively from what we're seeing in the issue, but we've got this amazing color, this teal color that kind of runs through the whole thing, and he's really good actually. Well, they're both really good at this kind of I suppose I should say Jeremy Colwell's really good at this with the coloring of that kind of one thematic color that runs through the whole cover. I mean, what are your thoughts on this bad boy?
The color is the first thing that jumps out to me here, and it's really well done. Just even the skulls, the exoskeletons in the foreground that are just kind of like you don't really notice them until you really stare at them, and then you can't not see them. You know, I like it. I feel like this is the story. Like, this is the cover to the story we expected when they said there was a Terminator, Transformer crossover.
Exactly.
And it's not, sort of the story we got, but and then just the little touches of red throughout, because Megatron has red on him, but then like the eyes of the Terminators kind of just popping that blue by having just the little bits of red throughout the cover. It's certainly the prettiest of the three.
Absolutely, and I love the fact that like Megatron is almost like the Sentinel Master mold, isn't he? Kind of like leading all of the Terminators out. I've mixed up so many different properties there. I apologize, guys, but like I do really enjoy this particular cover, and I think this is probably my favorite out of the three. Andrews is brilliant as well. And I do like Gavin's, but again, there's some funny things going on in there. Anyway, moving through, let's actually get into the actual issue itself. So, last time we chatted on issue 2, Decepticons were basically a full-on attack on the Cyberdyne facility. They just had a massive battle with the Autobots, leaving basically Sarah Connor, the Terminator, Prime, B, and then a bunch of other I suppose like half dying and also some alive Autobots. So they're at the Ark kind of cleaning up. There's been a big battle. Decepticons have attacked this facility, and that's kind of where we have left off. Now, coming into this issue, we're straight back at the Ark, and the Autobots are clearing everything up, and the Terminator is reluctant to help here, isn't he? Which I think is quite funny. They've just kind of put this truce together, and he's just standing there watching them clean up, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I was trying to figure out. I read through this a couple times. I'm like, who is Bumblebee dragging? And it's Grimlock.
Yes,
so it's someone much larger than him.
Funny you should say that. I realised it was Grimlock immediately, and I was really happy with myself because I noticed, I think, the claws on his on one of his arms, and I was like, hang on. So yeah, funny you should mention Grimlock there. I completely forgot that actually that's who he's dragging as well. But yeah, that's massive. And he's asking Sarah to help him, which is even funnier.
Yeah, I think what throws me is that there's that jazz like chassis in the upper corner and
Yes.
in the middle frame,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh, is that the rest of Jazz? And then you realize that it's Grimlock. You know, one of the neat things, you know, we get the Terminator vision at the bottom, and again we get a little Easter egg for Transformers fans, in that when he scans Bumblebee, his model number is 11C56, and so in the Japanese line, in the original Japanese line, Bumblebee was available twice in 1985 and 1986, and his numbers were 11 and C56.
Genius.
So
Genius. Man, that's another thing. We did discuss this in previous episodes, where when the Terminator does scan people, we get these Easter eggs pop up, and it's really interesting to kind of go through and have a look at them. And yeah, and I hadn't actually noticed the Bumblebee one, because I was I suppose it's not massively obvious, it doesn't stick out, and considering Bumblebee's been in previous issues, I just figured he'd already been identified. But we also get one with RC, don't we? Do you know what the significance is with that?
I'm not going to say I knew it off the top of my head. I did look it up. So the 2021 is a reference to her Thrilling 30 figure from the Generations line. It was Series 2 and then number 21.
Jeez, I love that about these comics. I love these beautiful little homages they drop in there. And there's a lot more actually in this issue than meets the eye. I couldn't help myself there. But what I do love is that RC is a threat level maximum when she's highlighted. And I feel like she's gone from this very kind of almost bit part player in the movie. Ever since that, she's been like portrayed as this absolute warrior badass, hasn't she? Like she was in like the IDW early kind of years. Her character for me was just amazing. I loved how she was developed, how she went from kind of like I don't know, she just went into this kind of crazy mode, didn't she? But then also like was like an assassin, and I just loved that about her. Similar to how they did Perceptor actually in that kind of run, and how he became like a sniper and like again a bit of a badass. They made all of these like almost like kind of like a bit nerdy, a bit like not that strong kind of characters. They made them really impressive in the IDW series for me.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it was funny. RC didn't click for me at first as the warrior badass, but it grew on me over time. You know, and they've definitely carried that over here into this book, into this series. And you know, not talking about the Terminator vision, even on page 2, there's another sequence here where Bumblebee, he's basically insulting Bumblebee, calling him weak to Sarah Connor, and he's like, I'm right here. And then in the Terminator vision, we get this little you know, possible vulnerabilities, and it's hearing and it's crossed out.
Brilliant. Again, a lovely little touch on that as well, and a nice bit of humor actually, coming from the Terminator of all things. But yeah, really cool. And so we also get we get an idea of who's actually alive as well at this point, and it's not many of them. I'm assuming here that as they're clearing up, every other Autobot seems to either be dead or inactive, or just not, you know, hasn't been dealt with by Teletran 1, which kind of intrigues me a little bit. It kind of makes me think, so we have got a very small team. We've got Ratchet, Wheeljack, obviously Bumblebee and Prime, and then we've got Velocity and RC. And it just seems like we are working with a small team here, aren't we? Like a lot smaller than most miniseries or even like long-running arcs.
Yeah, and a lot smaller than the Decepticons they're up against too. They're up against a much larger team on that front. It's worth noting that, I mean, other than RC, you really don't have any fighters here. You have, you know, Ratchet and Velocity, who are medics, and Wheeljack's an engineer, and Bumblebee's a scout. Like, you don't have, you know, then you have the Terminator, I guess. You know, so you don't have a lot other than Optimus and RC.
Exactly. And I quite like that, because it raises the stakes a little bit. It makes it more important for the Autobots, a bigger mountain to climb. No pun intended, because we are dealing with a volcano as well. And that wasn't really a pun, is it? Because they're two different things. So moving through the issue, this small team, this small group of Autobots, Prime separates them up into small teams, and they all go out and do separate missions. They all go off and do separate things. Bumblebee's going to take Sarah and kind of take her to safety. We've got Ratchet and Wheeljack, who are left behind to kind of deal with the cleanup operation. Thanks, Optimus. And try and sort the arc out again. And then RC and the Terminator are paired up, which I think is interesting, because he knows that RC is probably the best one to deal with the Terminator. and Velocity and Prime go off to also kind of scout and all that kind of stuff too. So they go off to do their different missions, and then we switch over to the Cyberdyne facility, where Megatron and his Decepticons are also carrying out missions. Starscream is interrogating, although the interrogation doesn't go very far. I asked him one question. It's not what he wants, so he kills them all, which is harsh, but, classic Starscream. We've got Soundwave and Refractor draining the facility for Energon, which isn't much, but that's what they're doing. Skywarp is on the lookout for Autobots, and the Insecticons are kind of digging for this robotics facility because Megatron has surmised that the threat is this Terminator and he wants to wipe that threat out. And this is all they're basically looking for this facility to kind of make Skynet not a problem anymore. What are your thoughts about this whole sequence with the Decepticons?
For the most part, it's pretty standard, but and even in that, I mean, the brilliant piece here is Starscream, that he, in his interrogation, he's basically looking for a way to get leverage on Megatron in it.
Yeah.
He's basically like, if you help me, I'll help you. But it feels like he's trying to help himself over everyone else.
Yeah.
Not necessarily find the truth. So it's a nice way to encapsulate the character here.
I would also say that Megatron probably hasn't sent Starscream to interrogate people. Starscream's just interrogating people as well. I could imagine that would, because as if Megatron would send him out to do that specifically,
Yeah, exactly. And one of the other things I like here is just, and this is also probably goes back a couple pages, is just the transformation sequences, the way Alex Milne draws these
gorgeous,
these 2 or 3 phase transformations for everyone who transforms. It's just a great level of detail. It's not something you see enough in the current Transformers series. And
absolutely. I have to agree with that. And I think the art in this is another level up from the first 2 issues, in my opinion. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of story to tell, but it's he's packing it with action. Even Skywarp on patrol, that one that rectangular panel looks so awesome. You've got him flying over the burning facility. It's saying is that Skywarp is out looking for any Autobot threats. And you think that is the most mundane thing to kind of put into actual, in a panel, and he makes it look like that. So it's there's aspects like that, the conversations that Megatron has with Thundercracker, you get that close up of Megatron's face, and it's just intense. There's just some beautiful artwork going on here, isn't there?
Yeah. And there's just so much, so many fine lines. There's a lot of emotion lines on Skywarp, or just that's what sells that scene for me. That and the colors, and even the kind of homage to the original series in the first panel with Soundwave manufacturing the Energon cubes, and even those turbines, that is straight out of the first episode of the series. Big time.
That is really cool, isn't it? Yeah. And I'm not sure about you, but do you hear his voice every time you read Soundwave?
Sometimes, it's funny because I've been reading the Transformers UK series a bit lately, and his wording doesn't work with that voice.
Yeah.
So not all the time. It all depends on what he's saying.
Well, I think he kind of needs to say less. I think Soundwave. Mm-hmm. I think you lose it when he gets a huge word balloon that just literally lists out exposition all over the place. I think that's where you lose that sound of his voice. But I have to say, whenever I hear it, I'm always trying to do it. It's the hardest voice ever. I love it. Affirmative. Rumble. Okay, so moving beyond the Decepticons, we come back to all of the smaller teams, I should say, kind of Autobot teams doing their missions. Bumblebee is taking Sarah away from the fight. The radio station reports of an attack on the Cyberdyne facility, and they both decide to check it out. So she's actually asked him to stop so she can change her clothes, which I think is a good way of getting her out of the uniform that she's been in this whole time. That's probably something they needed to do to kind of get her into some better togs. So that was an interesting kind of way to do it. And then the decision for them Bumblebees, supposed to be taking Sarah Connor to safety, is now then going, well, yeah, let's both of us go to the facility where the Decepticons are. It's asking for trouble. That Prime and Velocity are where the Decepticons were, where Megatron was getting his eye fixed. They find a casing of an old eye casing, don't they? Optic casing or something, I think they describe it as, or optic something. And that's obviously where Megatron was getting fixed up. But they also see the damaged car and all the I suppose they don't know dead humans are there because the remains just obliterate, but Prime is, fearing the worst on that side of things. So he realized the stakes are getting higher and higher at this point. And then we also flip over to RC and Terminator, and then this is really interesting, this part of the story, I think, because you get, initially I didn't think the Terminator was doing weird things until we got to the end of the comic, and then I had to go back and look at it again, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess he is. He's setting charges when they're not looking, isn't he? That's what he's doing.
Yeah. And it's throughout that whole page where once RC and Terminator are in where Wheeljack is and Ratchet are, you can see him setting one, and he's so small in the panel.
Yeah.
But setting one on this little green, chamber thing, and then he's throwing them out of the car as he's driving.
I think at first I kind of thought, what my thought was that RC and the Terminator were setting up perimeter defenses. That's what I thought was happening. And then it wasn't until after I kind of read it and was like, oh, he's probably doing that because it kind of every time you see him do it, she's not paying attention. She's not looking at what's happening. Like, obviously she's in car form when he's thrown out the window. She's also, there's one panel there, one tiny panel where she's looking elsewhere, and you can see him crouching down, putting one on the ground, but there's also one in the distance we're in the foreground where you can see that she can't see it. So yeah, that's really, really interesting. So had I noticed at this point that the Terminator was actually betraying them, I think I wouldn't have been as surprised at the end. And I think the end bit, when I read it, I was like, what? Because we'll get to that in a second. But what are your thoughts on that?
It's just a masterful way of telling the story, and I think this again goes to Alex Milne and his art and the detail level in his art. One of the things I like here is that one section of RC and Terminator out, where they're driving away from the Ark and he's planting all these charges. There's no word bubbles, right? So unless you stare at the artwork, you're blowing, as a reader, you're blowing past them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes past you on a first read.
Absolutely.
You forget that the whole sequence is, for the most part, silent. And then, once you realize it's something that you should take note of when you go back and read it the second time. There was a couple things, even with Bumblebee, talking about the detail of Alex Milne, like Sarah Connor, if you look at her hands, they got Band-Aids all over them. Just little touches, you're like, oh yeah, she probably got hurt a lot in that fight. And if they weren't there, you wouldn't notice they weren't there, but that they are there, and it just adds such a nice depth to the story. There's an Easter egg in the armory of Optimus Prime's gun on the wall. Don't recognize any of the other ones, but I'm sure there are a few more Easter eggs in there. And then, that whole sequence up until the end, that last section. And then, it's probably also worth noting here, RC's car mode is an 83 Mustang, which is really just nice design for her. I think it fits really well.
It's awesome, isn't it? I really like some of the details on it, like that classic thing on the back window where you've got the kind of almost like the shutters.
Yeah, the louvers.
Yeah, really, really like that. Thanks for that. The technical terms, and always gets me on those. Also, what I really like is the little kind of back and forth between RC and the Terminator, where they see that one of the scanners is on the ground and it's in pieces, and it's the one that obviously he, blew up in issue 1, and she's like, do you know anything about this? And he's like, it scanned me, which I think is just hilarious.
Yeah, and I think this might be something that might play into the story next issue.
Yeah,
because when he was scanned, he was inside of Optimus Prime, and so the idea is that it scanned Optimus Prime, but if he was inside him during the scan, it might have scanned the Terminator as well.
That's interesting. So you think there'll be a bit of Terminator on Terminator action in this one, do you?
Or a giant-sized Terminator Optimus.
Wow.
Later on.
That would be very cool, actually. Okay, so this is, so that again, that kind of really does, it preps us for what happens, and if you haven't, if you haven't actually noticed that, like I didn't, then, I think this will hit you harder at the end, which is great. But anyway, Bumblebee and Sarah are caught spying on the facility by Skywarp, of course that was going to happen. And then obviously he transforms as Skywarp appears, and he's like, surprise! It's like, you shouldn't say that. when you're in stealth. You should just attack. And that gives him obviously the time he needs to get Sarah in his car mode and zip off. And I think that is my favorite panel or series of panels in the issue, actually. It's the way that Alex draws that kind of reaction by Bumblebee, and then the transformation going down the hill, and then Skywarp chasing after him, transforming. I just think that's gorgeous.
Yeah, I couldn't sum it up any better. And they're both, in that half transformation throughout the scene, and then into the final. And you got to give big credit to the colorist on this as well, because they're coloring in half transparent colors so that they're see-through. You can still see the backgrounds on the old, the process of the transformation, but not in the final one. So it does such a good job of selling the motion of transformation in something that's, a still medium.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Absolutely. What I really love about this, as well as this action sequence, this kind of battle action sequence where you get Bumblebee kind of trying to drag Skywarp towards the Decepticons. Megatron's got his back turned to them at the time, and he's trying obviously to play chicken almost to then get Skywarp to crash into them. But obviously Skywarp warps and avoids that. But thankfully, just at that moment, obviously Prime and Velocity have been on the... Well, they basically found... They got the signal from Bumblebee, and they turned up just in time, and then the battle ensues. And we get this, again, amazing battle sequence, action sequence, again, beautifully drawn by Alex.
Yeah, and it's funny, I didn't realize Skywarp warps backwards.
Yes.
in the scene, and before getting shot down, and then the battle sequences, you got this nice 2-panel spread of kind of just like the A and the B side of things, and like everyone's kind of in the same position, but you have your opposite squaring off. It's really well done. That'd have been
a great splash page, wouldn't it? Kind of thing. Yeah. I mean, it kind of is. It works in that way. But I know I do love that. And I really love how he's drawn Bumblebee in the foreground on that as well. Like there's a real kind of, he's caught his personality beautifully. And the fact he's kind of smiling almost is quite funny. Like he's missed the battle. Do you know what I mean? I think that's really cool. Because he does mention, actually, doesn't he, early on, Bumblebee, he says, I'm a scout, but that doesn't mean I've forgotten how to scrap. Like I can still get into like a fight and so on and so forth. And that to me is almost a callback to that comment. And you see him in that picture and he's got a big beaming smile on his face.
Yeah, like he's small, but he can handle himself if he needs to. And then like he just hit that point where he couldn't handle himself anymore and the cavalry arrived.
Yeah, exactly.
So on the next page, you have again, not a lot of word bubbles, but a lot of just drawing and just visual storytelling. And again, second read, I didn't realize how RC is just jamming her sword through the front of Thundercracker. Like,
yes.
It's brutal.
Did not see that either until you just mentioned it, in actual fact. Again, this is one of those things, isn't it? When there isn't much to read, you don't necessarily focus on it as much. And I think that's what's happened here, because I did not see that she'd, used that sword to go straight through his cockpit, shall we say. So that is pretty harsh. Also, like something you mentioned in the last, I'm not sure if it was the last or the first episode we did, where you mentioned that there wasn't much in the way of sound effects being drawn. Now, there have been, actually. There's been like fizzats and transforming sounds and fits and laser crashes and all sorts. That's been done. But then you get into the battle and, Soundwave doesn't get a sound effect on his attack of Bumblebee, which I think you could have had something happening there, like an audio thing, couldn't you?
Yeah, and I think that's kind of been the downside of Transformers comics over the last 6 months or so, 6 or 8 months. Their regular letterer, Tom B. Long, he's left IDW, and for the longest, there was a lot of really good emphasis on sound effects, and then when you don't have it there, that's when you miss it. And I feel like they haven't quite recovered from that yet. But yeah, this is definitely a sequence that could use some.
It's weird that they've had it in the previous pages though, on this actual issue, and then nothing. Yeah, and then you get like obviously the Prime Megatron coming together, and they're fighting in their classic way. The axe and the kind of the huge spiked ball on a chain battle they always have. And then you get Refractor versus the Terminator, which I think this is where it gets interesting, because the Terminator throws that magnetic charge onto Refractor's face, basically, and then you see him click the detonator. And then we zip on over to the Ark, where Wheeljack and Ratchet are kind of chatting away, and then they hear the beeps of something in the distance, and that gets their attention. And lo and behold, the Terminator, all of his charges go off at once, take out Refractor's head completely, but then also takes out the Ark in the nothing can survive that, in my opinion. What are your thoughts? Because, I mean, look at that explosion.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we're set up to believe. I don't know what could possibly happen here, other than Wheeljack and Ratchet have realized something just before the explosion went off. But I love that we got the splash page, full page, of the explosion. I love that we're kind of waiting 2 pages for Refractor's face to blow up.
Yes, yes.
Nice touch. Again, the lack of sound effects, like the Terminator just having a little word of click like over the button would have sold that a little better for me.
Time.
And then we saw that his turn, that Refractor's face is his vulnerability in the Terminator vision, and he blows up. And it's neat to see also that as you're watching this, you get Velocity shooting another Refractor's face off.
Yes.
So she knows it's his vulnerability too, even without the Terminator vision, and they kind of give each other the thumbs up, which I think might be a reference to like Terminator 2 in some way, and then
absolutely,
it's a great sequence. I think they planted the surprise and they pulled it off, which I think is really hard to do sometimes in comics, and so the whole exploding the Ark and exploding Mount St. Hilary is really well done.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And I think this is like a really good twist in the issue, even though I should have seen it coming had I read it properly.
Well, I don't think that's on you. I think that there were some deliberate choices to make sure that you went too quickly to kind of make it a surprise.
Yeah, that's actually quite cool. Actually, and I love the way it's just a really well balanced issue in my opinion. And then obviously, just as they're saying nice job to each other, you get a few like laser blasts past the Terminator, and the last page is Starscream, and of course it's Starscream. He knows the secret. He knows what the Terminator is planning, and he says, "Look, I realize if I destroy all the flesh bags, as he calls them, then you cease to exist. So let's make a deal." And I find that brilliant. Again, that Starscream is the one. He's always the one who is he's the third wheel, isn't he? In this, it's always you've got Megatron's plan, you've got Optimus Prime and the Autobots kind of plan to stop Megatron, and then you have the wild card in Starscream, and that's what's happening here. And the Terminator is kind of like in that position where he's not fighting back, he's listening to what he has to say, and that's where that's it. We finish on that. Now, this is a 4-issue miniseries, right? So they're going to have to wrap it all up in that last issue. How do you see that going?
I don't know. Like I don't know how they're going to wrap this up. I try not to think too hard on it because I kind of want to be surprised. But if I was to guess, there's that bit with Optimus being scanned that I think might play into maybe him, being reworked into some sort of Terminator Prime situation.
Amazing.
Where he has to take down Starscream, but like if the tech, it's going to be interesting to see what Starscream does here if he tries to take the Terminator out of the equation by just eliminating all of the humans and all of Cyberdyne, or if he's leveraging the Terminator to take out Megatron, which would probably be his ultimate goal to begin with, right? Yeah. And the Autobots at limited numbers in this situation is another interesting twist. I don't know, like the Ark could be a big red herring. It could be the whole front of it was blown up and the whole inside was left alone, but he planted those charges in the medical bay. So unless they somehow got Trailbreaker repaired,
yeah, true,
was real thing.
Yeah, true. I mean, I think there's going to be more to it at the Ark. I think that there's going to be something else that's protected them. Maybe Teletran, maybe something along those lines. Maybe something has helped, but it's. And we are dealing with time travel here as well, don't forget. So, I mean, maybe that could come into it later on. We'll only say we've only got one issue to kind of see what happens. Overall, this issue, I kind of felt like there was tons of action especially in spaces in the issue where it you wouldn't expect it to be. Like, just them going on their missions and everything. Yet it seemed to be like really interesting and really visually like intriguing as well, and loads of good stuff happening. There was loads of battles, there was loads of fighting, loads of action. It was a really good issue for me. I think this is my favorite out of the 3 so far. What are your thoughts?
I would agree with you. I think this is the best one of the three so far. I mean, usually the second or third issue tends to be the best because you're kind of all ramping towards that moment. But just there's a good balance of story and action. And the artwork is phenomenal, which it's been throughout. But
Yeah.
I feel like to some extent too, like the creative team is starting to gel better. Like there's even with I say there's issues with lettering. The lettering has improved throughout into this issue, so it's getting better. So I think like as a team, they're starting to figure out how this story is supposed to play out on the page, and just kind of cutting Alex Milne loose. I mean, there's a lot of like full pages, or there's a lot of, and if not, there are 2 or 3 panels. They're not really kind of dense pages, and when they are, there's less word bubbles, it seems like. So they've really gone out of their way to craft the story so that you're surprised when you get to the trick ending, but still that you're not so far out of it that you check out and just kind of buzz through the whole thing.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what would you give it overall in the Terminator Skulls department?
I mean, in our what was it, 1 through 5?
Yes,
right?
out of 5, 5 being the best.
I'm gonna go full 5 on this one.
Awesome. You've gone full force 5. I'm gonna have to join you on this one. I absolutely bloody love this issue, and it was one of those ones. Again, I've said this in the past before. Like, comics have to really draw me in. And I have to kind of get lost almost in, like in whatever else is going on around me. Like, I have to be completely, just completely involved in every page and everything going on. If I get, if I start thinking of other things, or if, I don't know, something happens and I have to go off and do something, like this is definitely an example of just, keeping my interest going and drawing me into this universe. And I've really enjoyed just these first 3 issues. I'm not that fussed about how it finishes, honestly. I think the series as a whole, as a little mini, I think would be enough to get them to do like a Transformers versus Terminator 2. I could see that happening down the road, and then maybe bringing in some homages from that, like the T1000 and other aspects that they could kind of incorporate from that side, that film, the second film. Which I know there've been some like little nods, like say the thumbs up and other things have happened that very reminiscent of both of the Terminator and Terminator 2. But I think I could see that happening. I can see them doing it again, and I think this is going to be successful. It's certainly critically, from my point of view, a successful venture on their part.
Yeah, I think I've been calling this the mini series I didn't know I wanted, and I'm going to stick with it. It's been a good ride throughout, and I'm glad they did it.
Yeah, it's absolutely the same. Well, anyway, that brings us to the end. We've both given this one a 5-star, so if you haven't got on board yet, guys, then get on board, because it's so much fun. And obviously, Alex Milne's artwork is incredible. The coloring is just brilliant. Is it David Garcia Cruz? Absolutely, so rich. It really is brilliant. Get involved. It's fun. I don't care what you say. If you don't like it, you're wrong. And thank you so much for joining me for yet another Comics Burst. And I hope you can jump on for the fourth and final Transformers Terminator issue.
I would love to.
Awesome, man. We'll also have to chat about doing other Transformers related comic reviews as well, if you're up for that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Because the 84?
Transformers 84, yeah.
Like, I've only read the first issue, but I really enjoyed that. And that's already like 3 or 4 in, isn't it?
3 in, and there was a 0 issue last year.
Right, so we're gonna have to do that, aren't we? Pretty soon. Okay, so we'll put that on deck. And there's loads of Transformers comics coming out. There was another one. Was the one revealed today or recently, where is it called Escape, where they're leaving Cybertron on the cover?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the title. I already put the cover art on my iPad as my my lock screen, because it's the retailer incentive of Wheeljack's Face by Sarah Peter DeRoche. Is incredible.
Is it? I haven't seen that yet, I don't think. I've only seen the one where they're all escaping Cybertron, all the different arcs and vehicles and stuff.
Yeah, it's just this close up of his face, and there's reflections off of his lower faceplate. He's like, you can actually see like the way his eyes work. It's crazy.
I will definitely check that out afterwards. Anyway, Ant, mate, thank you so much, bud, for jumping on. That's it for this installment of the Full Force Comics Burst. Thank you to my awesome co-host, Ant from TFU.info and Transformers University. Make sure to check those both out. See you next time, and as always, full force. Make sure you get involved with the discussion by liking, sharing and commenting on these videos, and as always you can keep up with the show after listening by following on Twitter @The Full Force, liking the Facebook page facebook.com/The Full Force, and if you would like to contact the show you can message us on either of those platforms with feedback or questions. We have also started a Patreon page, so if you want to see your name up in lights on these videos or enjoy exclusive bonus content, then check out patreon.com/The Full Force Podcast, or click the link on any of the posts this podcast appears in. Full Force. And a big shout out to our sponsors, Distant Planet Comics and Collectibles, located at 601 Business Loop 70 West Suite 263, located in the Parkade Center, Columbia, Missouri. You can visit their website at distantplanetcomics.com and on Facebook at facebook.com/distantplanetcomics.